Hi, welcome to this introductory video to how to customize your Team Kinetic site. So what we're going to cover today is logging in as super admin and going through all of the super admin options and explaining what they are and explaining how they actually change and affect your site. Okay, before we crack on with the configuration of the system, which is what we're going to be covering in this video, it's important that we understand the terminology that we use and also what users have access to the system. So in terms of the users, right at the top of the tree we have the super administrators, and they have access to this black cog, which opens up the black super admin menu. Okay, and this deals with all of the, like I say, the fundamental configuration of your site, including the look and feel, the colors of the menus, and what happens when volunteers register, etc. That's what we're going to be dealing with later on in this video. Beneath that we have the administrators, so they don't have access to the black menu, but they do have access to the admin menu, which is this blue menu here, which deals with all the day-to-day kind of running of your volunteer program, how to manage volunteers, managing opportunities, etc. Beneath that we have providers. Now a provider is every opportunity has to be linked through to a provider. Okay, and providers could be internal, could be people who work within your organization, or they could be external. You might decide to make it available to kind of affiliated organizations, which also need volunteers. But every opportunity has to be linked to a single provider. So for this purpose, you often find that administrators are also set up as providers. That's quite common. Beneath that, we have, finally, we have our volunteers. So we all know who the volunteers are, but there is a type of volunteer called a team leader, which is essentially a volunteer who has the ability to say whether other volunteers have turned up for an opportunity, whether they've actually attended. Okay, because we often find that the providers who create the opportunities are not always there on the ground on the day, so they don't always know exactly what's happening or who's turned up, etc., where the volunteers do. So if you have a trusted volunteer, you might give them or make them a team leader, which means they then have the ability to actually mark down who's turned up. So we should also go over the terminology that we're using. So the main thing is the opportunity. So an opportunity is defined as the details of what the volunteer is actually going to be doing. And that may include restrictions as well. Then you've got sessions. Now, sessions are when and for how long the volunteer is going to be there for. So you often find that an opportunity it may have one session, which is just turning up one particular day for a couple of hours, but most opportunities tend to have multiple sessions, like every Thursday at 7 o'clock for 2 hours, for example, and it goes on for 52 weeks. In which case, it would have 52 sessions. We also have a thing called flexible opportunities, which essentially means that it's one very long session. So we don't know exactly when and for how long, but we know a rough start date and a rough end date, and it's going to be discussed between the provider and the volunteer exactly when they're going to be turning up. And the final one is inductions. So just to understand that when it comes to inductions, they are generic inductions onto the system and not inductions onto an individual opportunity. Okay. By now you should have received your initial information in regards to the web address of your site. So this one here is yourdemo33.volunteerkinetic.com, and you should also have received the admin address, so the address you have to go to log in as admin, with your email address or kind of login credentials to get into the site. So at the moment, we're on the basic front page of the site. This is the public facing side. So from here, volunteers can register, and people who need volunteers, what we call providers, they can also register on the site. People can also search for opportunities, and it's important to remember that they don't have to be registered or logged into the system in order to search for opportunities, but they do in order to join an opportunity. So what we need to do to get to the customization options, which is the first thing we need to do in terms of the setup of the site. So in order to do this, we need to log in as a super admin. So we don't go to the normal front page web address to log in as admins or super admins. We have to go to a slightly different address, which is /vk/admin. Okay, that takes us to the admin login screen. From here, you put in your username or email, username and password, which should have been emailed through to you, and we log in. Now, when we log in as administrator, we get this extra option on the top, a little black cog. If you're logged in as just a normal admin, you don't get this. Only super admins get this option. Okay. So when I click on this black cog, it takes me through to the super admin menu, which is the black menu here. So the purpose of this training session is basically to go through all these things on this super admin menu here. So before you go live, you need to make sure that you're happy with all the settings on all of these different pages, okay, on the super admin menu. So let's start with the first setting, which is the profile page. So if you go to settings and profile, this is where you put in the name of your organization, my organization, contact name. Okay, some of this may already be entered in for your particular system. It depends on how you've kind of reached this point. If it is, then obviously ignore it. If there's any blanks in there, then you'll need to enter in some information. The red fields, they're all mandatory fields, okay, and the white fields are optional. So I'm going to put in telephone number. Usually you'll find that your email address is the same as the forward all site emails to address. They tend to be the same, so I'm just going to copy and paste that. Okay, so the difference between these two email addresses here is this is the one that appears on the contact us page. So if anyone goes to the contact us page, they're going to see this email address here and this phone number. This is where if as an admin you send an email to a volunteer and they reply to it, where that reply gets sent to. So which is why it's usually the same as this email address up here. Okay, then we've got text response number. So this is a bit confusing because people say, well, why does it say number? And I'm putting in text. The reason being is it can be a number or text. So if you send out an SMS text from the system and they click on reply, then you have the option, if you send out a text from the system and they click reply, then if you put in a phone number, it's going to reply to this phone number here. So if I put in a mobile phone number, then it will reply to that phone number there, which is great if you've got a mobile phone set aside for your particular system, so you can volunteers can respond to it. But often many organizations don't have a specific mobile phone set aside, in which case they prefer it just to come from a name rather than a phone number, which means the volunteers can't reply to the text message, but at least they know who it's from. So I'm going to put my org vols, okay, my organization volunteers. We've got some other options down here which are optional, about the email footer, etc. Once you're happy with it, click on the update button. Okay, next stage. Now what we've got down here is what we call the side menu. So whenever I refer to or mention a side menu, that's what I'm talking about. On the left hand side, the grey menu that appears, and you'll see this on many pages through the system. So the next one on the side menu is location. So if I change and put in a postcode, I'll do. Click on update. That's it. The location's done now. And the final one is license details. This tells you obviously how long you've got left on your license. Next option down under settings is application options. This is quite a big one. On the side menu, the first option we've got is automation. So enable access to new volunteers. So this means that if a volunteer registers on the system, should they be able to join opportunities straight away? Now, if there's any scenario where that can happen, say for example, I know it's quite normal to have, you might have 20 opportunities, and 19 of them, there might be some kind of a shortlisting process, or you want to handpick those people. But there's one opportunity which is, it's litter picking or something like that, way there's no shortlisting process. It's kind of the more the merrier. In which case, you may want volunteers to be able to register and join that opportunity straight away. Okay, there's no kind of induction process or anything like that. And if that is the case, then you need to change this option to yes, because essentially what you're saying is there is opportunities where volunteers can register on the system and can join this opportunity without any checks whatsoever, which is quite normal. Enable access to new providers. So if a provider registers, should they be able to create opportunities straight away? Usually that's set to no, because organizations tend to want to speak to the providers of opportunities first to make sure they're legit, make sure they've got all the correct kind of infrastructure in place in terms of insurance, etc. So they'd at least want to kind of have a chat with or send an email to the provider and get a bit more information before they allow that provider to create opportunities on their system, just so the provider knows what's expected of them. Authorized new opportunities. So this is if a provider is allowed on the system, should every opportunity should it be checked before it goes live on the system? This is also usually set to no, which means that that the admin has to manually kind of okay every opportunity before it goes live on the system. So if that's the case, that's what you want, then make sure that option says no. Approve new positive feedback by volunteers. So as part of the process of volunteers being able to log hours, we also ask them for feedback, like a thumbs up and a thumbs down on what their experience was like on the opportunity, and a short kind of brief couple of sentences giving some feedback on whether they enjoyed it or not. So this information is shared, a bit like TripAdvisor, it's shared with other volunteers. Now, there's a rule in place, regardless of what you choose here, there's a rule in place that says any thumbs up feedback, so if you do thumbs up and type in a bit of text, that will be shared with other volunteers. But any thumbs down feedback automatically gets emailed through to the administrator, because we feel that the administrator will deal with it more diplomatically than someone reading it kind of hard off the screen. Now, what this is saying here is approve new positive feedback by volunteers, which means exactly that. If it's positive and it's thumbs up, should we share it straight away? This is usually set to yes. If you do change it to no, which means that you want to check every single piece of feedback before it gets kind of shared with other volunteers, that's fine, but it can be quite a lot of work. So just keep that in mind, because there's a lot of feedback that comes through. The next option down is enable auto induction of volunteers. So this is about generic inductions onto the system. So it's not about inductions onto individual opportunities. It's specifically about inductions onto the system. So if every volunteer, regardless of what area they're interested in, if every volunteer needs to be inducted onto your system, then you may be interested in this particular option. Auto induction of volunteers means that when they register, they will automatically basically marks them all as being inducted. So they'll automatically be able to join opportunities which have been restricted to volunteers who have been inducted, if that makes sense. The next option down is the send weekly summary email. So on Friday at 6 o'clock p.m. At that time, the system automatically sends out a weekly email, and that is sent. It includes information like how many hours a volunteer has logged. It also lets them know if there's any opportunities that they've joined that are taking place in the next 7 days. So it gives them a heads up, and it also shows any opportunities that have been added to the system in the previous 7 days. Now you can switch off if you don't want any volunteers to receive this email. You can switch it off just by changing that to no. Now, volunteers can opt out of these weekly emails, I should say that. If they do opt out of it, then they will not receive the weekly email, obviously, unless they have an opportunity which is taking place in the next 7 days. If they do, then that's classed as a kind of a transactional email, which means it's something that the volunteer needs to know. So they will still receive that email. But if you change this to no, then absolutely no volunteer, regardless of the circumstances, will receive that weekly email. Final option on this page is criminal check maximum expiry period. So we deal with criminal checks within the system. You can kind of record this information, and it kind of monitors it and tells you when people's criminal checks are close to expiry, and you can store the kind of their criminal check numbers and information within the system as well. The purpose of doing this is you can create opportunities which are restricted only to people who have a criminal check. Okay. Now this option here is saying what is the maximum expiry period. So over what period would you decide that actually anything longer than that and this criminal check should no longer be valid, it needs to be redone. So this is set to 12, so it's 12 months. So after 1 year of a criminal check, then it will flag up that volunteer and say this volunteer needs another criminal check being done on them. Okay, so I'll click on the save button now. Next option down is registration from the side menu. Allow provider registration. So this is about the buttons that appear on the front page. Just to show you now, just bring this up for you. If we go back to the front page. Okay, so we've got these two buttons here. This is the volunteer registration button, and this is the provider registration button. And these options are about, that I'm about to show you, basically either hide these buttons here, depending on how you set them up. So allow provider registration. If that's set to yes, then this blue button is going to appear. And if they allow volunteer registration set to yes, then the green button would appear. Obviously, we've got collect ethnicity data. That's just basically what questions are asked them during the registration process. You can customize your ethnicities list as well. Just if you're thinking about that, you've got a specific list for your organization. Collect emergency contact details. This is also a field which is information that's collected as part of the registration process. You can decide whether you want to collect that. Normally, emergency contact details are collected. Because obviously, if they get injured, etc., or something happens, you need to know who to contact to inform them. Next one down is volunteer registration verification age. So there's different ways we kind of restrict volunteers who come onto the system, and one of them is the minimum registration age. So what is the absolute minimum age that a volunteer could attend one of the opportunities in your system? So maybe this is set to 12 years old. But when you say volunteer registration verification age, so what's this about? Basically, this is it will ask the volunteer if they are below this age. So if I set it to 16, if they're below 16 when they're registering, it will ask them for the parent's email address. Then it will automatically email the parent, informing them that they're joining your volunteer program, and it will ask them to click on a link to confirm that they're happy with the fact that the volunteer has joined your volunteer program. So it's just an extra level of verification. So click on save there. Next one down is opportunities. Use criminal check options. So this is just whether the options are available at all. So some people say, well, we don't want to deal with criminal checks at all, in which case they'd switch that to off. Show criminal check options to providers. So you may say, okay, I want administrators to, when they're creating opportunities, to be able to restrict it to requiring a criminal records check. Or you may, but I don't want providers to be able to do it, because the providers might be external organizations that need volunteers. In which case, you change that to no. Show induction options to providers. So same again, when a provider is creating an opportunity, they have the ability to say only volunteers who've been through the generic induction onto this volunteer system, only they can join this opportunity. If you don't want to give them that option at all, then, or you don't do generic inductions, then just change that to no. Enable post-opportunity surveys. So when a volunteer has completed an opportunity and goes to log their hours, you have the ability to ask them to complete a survey. And it could be a survey you've created in anything, in Google Forms, it could be in SurveyMonkey, for example. And all you do is when you create the opportunity, you say, yes, this opportunity includes a survey, and it will ask you to put in the link to that survey. If you're not interested in capturing or doing surveys on volunteers, then you can just change that option to no. Enable post-opportunity uploads. So volunteers, once they're on an opportunity, they have the ability to upload files to that opportunity. So it might be, some universities use this where they want their volunteers to kind of complete an activity sheet, which explains in a bit more detail what they've been doing on that opportunity. In which case, it's best to allow them to be able to upload them sheets, that activity log, to the opportunity, so it's all in one place. And this would allow them to do it if it was set to yes. Enable opportunity chat rooms. So within each opportunity, it has its own chat room where volunteers can, on that opportunity, they must be on that opportunity, but they can talk to each other. and also the provider of the opportunity and the administrator can also be included within that conversation, that chat room. So this yes or no dictates basically whether that option is available for people to have conversations within the opportunity chat room. Enable opportunity sharing to national partners. So the Team Kinetic systems linked up with a Do It system, which some of you may have heard of in the UK, and also our national tryvolunteering.com system. If you change this option to yes, then essentially you're saying, okay, when someone creates an opportunity, give them the option of sharing that opportunity with these national systems, which means that volunteers from these national systems will be able to see that information and join the opportunity. Use references. So we've got a whole reference system built into Team Kinetic where you can say that a particular opportunity requires one or more references, and you can stipulate exactly what those references are. It basically moves the entire reference system to an electronic version. So it's completely paperless. So you can create the reference forms, add the questions in there, and then you can stipulate against an opportunity. This opportunity requires my reference form 1, for example. Once you do that against an opportunity, when a volunteer goes to join the opportunity, then it will say, okay, you need reference form 1. And if they haven't already completed that or got a reference called reference form 1, then it will turn around to the volunteer and ask them to enter in a referee's email address, and it will automatically email off that reference form to that referee. And then it will allow the referee to complete it and send it back, and it keeps it all within the system, so you can kind of monitor it and decide whether you should approve that reference, for example. Next option down is team leaders. I'm just going to quickly breeze over this one. So team leaders are the kind of volunteers with additional power to be able to mark down whether other volunteers have turned up for an opportunity. So just to say, so team leader is a volunteer who has the additional power, additional ability to be able to mark down whether other volunteers have turned up for an opportunity. The reason why we have this option is because quite often volunteers know what's happening more on the ground than the person who's created the opportunity. The person who's creating the opportunity might not even be there in person. So sometimes it's deemed useful to kind of designate a kind of trusted volunteer to say, okay, then you're a team leader, and on the day, can you go and mark down who's actually turned up? Next one down, share with a link-wide network. So a number of our systems, you can link systems together. So we have some of our clients are linked up to kind of 14 or 15 different systems. What this allows them to do is when they create an opportunity, they can decide to share it with that link-wide network, which means that the opportunity is visible on every one of those systems. Okay, now obviously to become part of a link-wide network, then there needs to be a conversation with us and a conversation with the other people within that network. Next one down is default minimum opportunity age. So not only do we have a minimum age to get onto the system, which is we set to 12 before, for example, which means that if they try to register and they put in a date of birth of 11, saying that they're 11 years old, it would not have let them register on the system. It says, sorry, you are too young, and goes back to the front page again. But this one here is the minimum opportunity age. So you can restrict individual opportunities to a minimum age. You may say, well, this opportunity requires someone slightly older, so I'm going to set it to 25 years old, for example. But what is this option that we're looking at now is what should that be set to by default for every opportunity? It's usually set to the same age as the minimum age of the system, but not always. The next option down is send session join notification to administrator. So if a volunteer joins an opportunity, should the administrator get an email every single time? Some administrators prefer this to be switched on, although for people with larger systems, it can often end with a lot of emails being sent to the administrator. So just be aware of that. Enable overlapping session booking. So should volunteers be able to join 2 opportunity sessions which take place at the same time or which overlap? So this one here, send session join notification to provider. So if a volunteer joins a session, should the provider receive an email? And we've got allow opportunities to be pinned. So the pinning of opportunities is basically a way to promote opportunities to the top of the search results. You can use this, and sometimes it's good if you want to kind of fill an opportunity urgently, but just remember to unpin the opportunity afterwards if you are going to use this function, because what you don't want to end up is 5 or 6 opportunities sat at the top of every single search that anybody does, because it will look strange and volunteers will think that the system's not working correctly. So if I should say, when it comes to pinning opportunities, it'll only put them at the top if the volunteer doesn't enter in any search criteria. If they just click on search button, then it will show that this opportunity, the pinned opportunity, at the top of the search results. If they do start typing something in, then it will ignore the fact that it's pinned, because it obviously it thinks that the volunteer has a clearer idea of exactly what they want to do. Or maybe they're trying to find a particular opportunity they've been made aware of previously. So once you're happy with those options, you click on the Save button, and then down to text messaging. You get 50 free text credits with the system. You can purchase more through the system. Now you can send text messages to volunteers manually through a number of different methods, or you can set up automated text messaging. This is all related to automated text messages. So that's where you buy more text credits down here, put in the details. And this is to do with the automated text messaging. So for example, you might say send session reminder text. If that's changed to yes, then it will send a text to every volunteer about 12 o'clock the day before the volunteer needs to turn up to an opportunity. A bit like your you might have dentist appointments like that, where you get a text message a day before, a quick reminder. Now it does make a difference on the no-shows, in terms of it reduces the no-shows for opportunities, but obviously there is a cost involved. It's using a text message, so you have to decide whether it's worth the price. You've also got a number of other options on here. So for example, send a text when the volunteer registers saying, oh, congratulations. That works quite well. I tend to find it's like an extra kind of confirmation to the volunteer that everything's gone through successfully. Once you're happy with these options, if you're not sure, I recommend just setting them all to no, getting used to the system, and then you can always come back to this page and switch them to yes if you feel necessary. Once you're happy with it, click on the Save button, and we go down to everything else. Nicely worded. So top option on the Everything Else tab is allow volunteers to upload their image or their photo essentially to the profile. So this is useful if people turn up. If the provider or the administrator can see a picture of the volunteer, then they know to look out for them when they turn up for the opportunity. So it can be very useful. Enable hour trades. So there's a number of ways to incentivize volunteers to log their hours, essentially. One of those ways is called hour trades, which essentially turns the number of hours that volunteer hours that they've done into a form of currency, which can be exchanged for anything you like. So you might say if you were a sports organization, you might say, okay, then I'll give you a 20% discount on our sports course, a course that we're running. But you can only get a 20% discount if you trade in 20 of your volunteer hours, which doesn't change the reporting side of things for the volunteer. The system still knows they've done those 20 hours, but it allows it kind of, like I say, it turns those hours into a form of currency, which they can trade then for the discount on the course, just like an extra incentive, an extra way of saying thank you. Next one down, enable one-way sharing. So this is only useful if you are part of a link-wide network. So you can decide, okay, then I want to share my opportunities with a wider network, but I do not want the wider network's opportunities appearing on my system. Next one down, show full volunteer postal address to providers. So this is about what information you allow providers to see. So you have to have a chat about it. I mean, there has to be a good reason to share the full postal address with providers. But if there is a good reason, if those providers are likely to send information out to them via the post, then you may want to share that information. As I said, it's providers. Admins can always see it, but this is about whether providers should be able to see that information about the volunteer. Allow providers to view volunteers' special needs. So as part of the registration process, the system will ask, do they have any special requirements? And it could range from anything from wheelchair access through to suffer from epilepsy or asthma or something like that. The question is, should that information be stored just on the system for administrators, or should providers also be able to see that information? Usually you allow providers to see it because they're the ones who are running the opportunity, and it's important that they know that the volunteer suffers from asthma or suffers from epilepsy. But it's down to you to choose. User training and courses function. So at the top, I'll go back to the front page now, we've got an option here that says training. So if a volunteer clicks on this, or a member of the public, they can see a list of any training courses that you run within the volunteer program. Or even training courses which are external to your program. You might know an organization that's running first aid courses, and you might think it's useful for your volunteers to actually get to be first aid qualified. In which case you can add the course on and kind of put links on there and tell people how to actually get onto that course. So this option here, back into the options page, is use the training and courses function. If that's set to no, then that training menu button does not appear. Basically hides it. Show the front page slider. So the front page slider is this image here with this lady with a thumbs up. Okay, now you can customize this and change this, we're going to go on to it shortly, to suit your organization. But you may not want to show this at all. Okay, in which case, show front page slider, you could change to no. Show nationally shared opportunities on mobile apps. So as you may be aware, the Team Kinetic system is backed up with Android and Apple mobile apps. And you can download this by going to Team Kinetic in the App Store, and you'll see our logo and you'll be able to download it. Now, when a volunteer, once they're registered on the system, when they log in via the app, if they can't register via the app, but they can log in via the app, once they log in, the system looks at it and it knows what system they registered on and said, okay, this Joe Blogs is part of your demo 33 in this particular instance. That's the organization. So I'm going to show them opportunities which are available on your demo 33. Now you can also include opportunities that are available from our national tryvolunteering.com system. Okay, so if you think they're going to be short on opportunities, you may want to also include those nationally shared opportunities. It's up to you, but this option basically dictates whether those opportunities are available when your volunteers log into the app, or whether it's just your opportunities. So once you're happy with these options, click on the save. So the next option is settings and down to setup. So from here, we've got the About Us page. The About Us page is visible. So if you go onto the front page here, you've got About Us here. So it's when you click on this, if a member of the public or volunteer clicks on the About Us page, this should be obviously include information about your volunteer program. So you can set that up here. You can type information here, you can add images, etc. You can even add HTML. If you click on the source button there, you can, if you've got someone internally who's familiar with HTML, and you can kind of set up, make the page a bit more fancy. We've got terms and conditions, the next option down. So when a volunteer registers, or a volunteer or provider registers, at the end of the registration process, they're asked to click on a tick box to confirm that they agree with your terms and conditions. Now, there are some default terms and conditions that have to be in the system, which kind of cover Team Kinetic for legal reasons, but you can add your own terms and conditions which sit above our terms and conditions. Okay, and you can add those terms and conditions just by simply clicking down here and typing in whatever terms and conditions you feel suitable. Now, they don't have to be kind of legal terms and conditions. There might be kind of best practice guidelines. It's completely up to you. Next option down is registration fields. So when a volunteer or a provider registers, then obviously you get the ability to dictate what questions they have to complete. Now, there are a number of the questions that are there by default are kind of the standard questions that the system needs to know in order to function. So it needs to know the volunteer's email address. Otherwise, how is the volunteer ever going to log in, for example? But what you can do, you can change the field headings. Like you might say, instead of email, you might want it to say email address. For example, when you hover the mouse over the help option there, you can change what the help option says. And you can do this with all the other standard fields down here. Okay. Registration invites is the next one down. So if you wanted to invite volunteers onto the system, you can click on the add button here, and you can send out basically an invite to all those volunteers, which will include allow them to click on a link, and it will ask them to register in the normal way through the system. But this is where you set up your invites for your volunteers. We just spoke about ways to incentivize volunteers to log hours before, and we mentioned the hour trade vouchers. We turn it into a form of currency, if you remember. Another way you can do it, which doesn't cost anything at all, it's a bit of a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned, is the achievement badges. So this kind of works like a computer game. So the more hours the volunteer logs, the higher level up they get. For example, the better badge they get. So by default here, everyone starts as a member, and it will show this badge. So when the volunteer logs in the top corner of the screen, they'll see this badge, and it will say you are a member, and that's because it's on 0 hours. Once they've logged 50 hours, the badge will then change to achiever, and it will show this badge in the corner. So what you need to do is check through these and basically alter the hours, alter the names of the different awards to kind of suit your organization. You can actually alter the badges themselves. That's what this custom award badges here. So you can change what those badges actually look like. This is quite high here, so you've gone from 0, and the next level up is 50 hours. Normally it's kind of something like 5 hours, because you want to give someone some incentive, something where they can relatively easily achieve, within volunteering for a day. So I would tend to set this at 5. The way I'd approach it is pick out your top 2% of volunteers and think how many hours in total. So this is not per year or per month, this is in total, how many hours those top 2% have achieved. If it's 250 hours, then I would change that to 250. And that way, you've just got to fill in the gaps in the middle then. So if we start at 5, the top end is 250. I might say this one is 20 hours. This one is, let's say, 50 hours. This one is 150. Might be something like that. Once you're happy with it and you've changed the names as well, you click on the save. Next one down, you've got opportunity categories. This is an important one. So every opportunity is assigned to a category, and that's for 2 purposes really. The first purpose is volunteers can search by category if they want to. They don't tend to, in all honesty. They tend to either just click on the search button and scroll down which automatically orders it by distance from the volunteer, or they tend to type in a word like netball or football or litter picking or gardening or whatever it is. That's what they tend to do, but they can search by category if they want to. So that's the first purpose of categories. The main purpose is for reporting. Your reporting. So if you wanted to know how many hours have been logged in, let's say sports, then you may say, okay, then I'm going to have a category called sports, and the system then knows to look at every opportunity which has been linked through to that sports category, and through doing that it can work out which volunteers are on those opportunities, and it can tell you how many hours have then been logged on those opportunities which are linked to that category. So you find out how many hours are logged within that category. So the main purpose is for reporting. You can have as many categories as you like. I recommend probably any more than a dozen. It's probably too much, my experience. Just beware that when you're creating these categories, if you have external people creating opportunities, then it needs to make sense to them, because they're going to be asked to select a category for any opportunity they create. So to create an opportunity, it says, what category is this? So it's got to make sense to them. So try and avoid using kind of terminology which is only understood within your organization. If you've got external people creating opportunities, they must be able to understand it as well. Okay. Next one down is social media. Now we have a whole load of functionality around the ability for volunteers to be able to link to their social media. This is about your organization, linking to your organization's social media. So by linking through to Twitter or to Facebook, for example, I can choose or dictate when the system sends a post out to that social media site. So maybe it's every time a new opportunity has been authorized or been added, it will automatically send a tweet out if I change that to yes. In order for these options to become accessible, we need to actually sign into your Twitter site through this page here, or sign into your Facebook site or your WordPress. Then the options become active. Okay, just by linking up, if you link up, there's no harm in just linking up to your Twitter site. It won't send any social media, so it won't send any kind of tweets out, for example, just by linking up. What it will do though is allow you to drag tweets from your Twitter site and show them within the footer, for example, of this volunteer of your Team Kinetic system. But it's only when you change these options to yes does it start sending information the other way. Does it start sending information from Team Kinetic out to your social media site? So I know it's sometimes that the comms teams are kind of quite nervous, understandably, about linking up the system to their social media sites because they've got kind of ultimately they're in control and responsible for those. But you can kind of put them at rest just by linking them up. It won't do anything that will affect their social media feeds. It's only when you change these options to yes, will it actually start affecting those feeds. Finally, we've got widgets down here. I'm going to quickly breeze over this. So widget is the ability to kind of put in a mini search bar within an external website. So you may have like an affiliated organization who's where you know some of your volunteers often go to, and you might have a chat with them. They might be happy for you to put a little search bar within their website, which allows people to search for opportunities that have been created within your Team Kinetic system. And if they click on the opportunity from this external website, so they do a search, they click on the opportunity, it will direct them through to your system. So it's like a mini search bar that you can embed in external websites. So the next option is the look and feel. So you go to settings, down to look and feel. So we've got the logo. Obviously you can change your logo, which appears in the top left. Clicking on the choose file. You've got the colors. So these are the menu colors here. And we've got the button colors, and we've got the volunteer registration, provider registration buttons. To change any of these, the colors, you just simply click on it. You can either choose a color or you can put in the hex code, it's the HEX code, which is what websites use to define colors basically. That's their referencing system. So yep, you can change that. You can also change the background, so the page background. So you can decide whether it should be an image, whether it should be a tiled image, or whether the image should be stretched across the whole page. You can also change whether it scrolls. So what this means is when I scroll the window up and down, does the background stay stationary, and just the central window, this bit between this area here, is this the only bit that moves, or does it all move together? Okay, so you have to play around with that. You can also change the color if you didn't want a background image. The front page section here. So the front page is what we call the body section. So if I go back to the front page here, so the body section, so what we've been speaking about tonight, so we've done the logo, we've talked about the changing the menu bars and changing the color of these buttons and this button down here. We've also got the footer, which is this black section at the bottom, which I haven't got anything in at the moment. Above the black section and below the search bar, you can have what we call a body section, like the front page section. It's what it's called in the options. And that is, you can put anything in there. You can put videos in there or images and a bit of blurb about your volunteer program, anything you like. In order to do that, then you'd have to go onto this page here, go to look and feel, go to front page, and you can either type in static text, or if you click on the source button and you're familiar with HTML, then you can actually put in the HTML code and make it fancy. Next one is footer. So that's obviously the black section at the bottom. It's broken into 4 sections, this. So you've got A, B, C, and D. Now A and D are identical, so they go across the full width of the page. So if I typed in something into here, a load of text into here, then when I go back to the front page, the text would appear across the full width of the page, just above the Team Kinetic logo. If I chose B and C, tick both of them, then it would break it into 2 columns. And I might want to show my Twitter feed on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, I might want to show an RSS feed, which is like your WordPress feed or latest opportunities, etc. Okay, now just be aware that when you do make changes to the footer, it takes about 10 minutes to update. So once you do, make the change, go and make a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and by the time you come back, it should be ready. And what you do is when you come back, you look at your front page, you refresh the page. Okay, you can do that by holding Control key down and pressing F5, and that will refresh the page, and you'll be able to see the changes take effect. And finally at the bottom we've got CSS. So don't worry about this. If you don't never heard of CSS, then just ignore this page. If you have, then this is the ability to change basically the kind of framework of the system. But you need to be kind of clued up with CSS before. Don't just kind of do it unless you really know what you're doing, because it can make some quite big changes to the look and feel of the site. Okay, so that's look and feel. Next one is homepage slider, which is kind of should be in look and feel, I suppose, but this is about the that sliding image. So let me show you on the front page. So this image here with a lady with a thumbs up. So you can change which sliders appear. So just by selecting choose file here, I can upload an image and I can put a bit of text in. The image will show obviously where this rectangle is here, and the text will appear, the title text will appear here, and the content text will appear here. And this speech kind of rectangle will slide down from the top of the screen. If you have more than one sliding image, so if you add this one and then I keep adding more, then every kind of 5 or 6 seconds they'll rotate and it will slide across, and the next slide image will appear. I recommend you don't have any more than kind of 6 images, because no one's going to sit and kind of watch 6 images slide past on the front page. It's very unlikely. So keep it to about 6, and try and it's a really good way to promote any kind of up and coming events you've got happening, or anything that's big that's coming up. Because if you think about it, on the front page, this is a massive picture which every volunteer, or even the members of the public, are going to see. It's one of the first things they're going to see. So it's a good place to kind of promote those big events. Okay, next one. Oh, the only final thing I should say about this is when you are uploading, when you choose a file here, it does tell you when you're uploading it, make sure the images are the right size. So as we can see, this rectangle here is about 3 times wider than it is tall. So if you put a square image in there, you upload a square image, click on the choose file and upload a square image, you can't possibly show the full image because it's a square image and you're trying to fit it into a rectangular hole. So what you need to do is try and make sure either the image is roughly the right kind of size, or you might have to chop it down, you might have to crop it so it's roughly the right size. Okay, next one down is customize emails. So there's a lot of emails that get sent out from the system, automated emails. You have the ability to change a number of these emails. So the first one is volunteer registration. And you've got a few other ones down here. You could change the text that appears. So for example, at the moment when a volunteer registers, the subject title of the email they receive will be this here. It will then be followed by, in the body section, by all of this text down here. Now, the text in the grey areas, that can't be altered by yourselves. That's fixed because it's merging in information into these areas. But you can change the editable region there. Okay, so I highly recommend that you go through all of these emails. You'll make sure you're happy with the wording of those emails before you go live. Next one down, really important one, is custom questions. So in custom questions, we have this is about the registration questions and the information that's captured on the volunteers and the providers. So under volunteer registration, at the moment, it's just going to ask the standard questions. So like email address, first name, last name, date of birth, address or location, that kind of information. But you can add additional questions in if you want. If you wanted to ask additional questions during that registration, during that onboarding process, the registration pages, then they will appear at the end, okay, as like a separate page, and like the last stage of the registration, and it will ask those additional questions. Now you can define what those questions are by clicking on the add question button here, and you say who's it for. Well, it's for volunteer registration, and you type in shoe size, whatever it is, and you might say, okay, what question type is it? Well, how do they answer? Well, it's not free text. I don't want them to say small or medium, because it's very hard to kind of manage, because you get people who say kind of small to medium, or give you sizes which don't make any sense. So it's best to have a drop down in this particular example, and you choose what value should appear. So you might say 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, so you can define what options are going to appear in the drop down. It may be a provider registration question, which works in exactly the same way. It may be for the volunteer profile and provider profile. So this is information you can capture on the volunteer, but it's not captured during the registration process. so it doesn't appear as a question in the registration process. But if the volunteer logs in and they go to their profile page where it shows their address and their name and all that kind of stuff, they can see these additional questions there. Okay, so it's additional information that's held against the volunteer or the provider, which is not asked to them during the registration process. So if I click on volunteer profile here, I might say, okay, then I want to record their shoe size, but I want to record it myself, for example, which may mean that, yes, I want the volunteers to be able to see what shoe size I've assigned to them. Yes, I do. Do I want the volunteers to be able to change it? No, I don't want them to be able to change it because I've measured their feet myself and I know exactly what size they are. It'd be a weird example, but it could be true. In which case, I will leave that at no. So you can decide whether volunteers see the information at all, or if they see it, can they change it? Okay, and that's held against the volunteers. So that's the custom questions. Last option on the settings menu is reference forms. So if you don't deal with references, you're not interested in kind of holding references against volunteers, just ignore this part. If you are, then you can go to reference forms here and you can start creating your own reference forms. So when you create a reference form, you give it a name. I might say basic reference. You give it a level. So the purpose behind the levels is it allows you to define whether it's a kind of detailed reference form. So you might say I'm going to change a basic reference as level 1, but if it's an advanced one where you're asking lots of detailed questions, then you might say, okay, I'm going to set that to the highest level. Okay, and once you add it, then the next thing is it's going to ask you to put in the questions. What questions does that reference form contain? You might say, remember, this is going to the referees. So it's not going to the volunteers, this is going to the referees. So you might say, how do you know this volunteer? What's your relationship with a volunteer, etc. Okay, and once you create the reference form, when somebody goes to create an opportunity, then they can say this opportunity requires the volunteer to have a basic reference, for example, and it will check whether the volunteer's got that reference, and if it hasn't, it will ask them to enter in their referee's email address, and it will automatically send out the reference form to the referee. So that's all the setting options done. The next one is accounts. So under admin accounts, you can see your admin details here. You go to manage accounts here. We can't do it here because it's a demo site, but it will show you all the admins and super admins that have been set up on the system. And you can obviously add accounts by clicking on that plus button there. The final option within the super admin menus is notifications. So this is when a volunteer logs into the system, a little notifications can appear across the top of the page. And you can say what those notifications are. It doesn't have to be volunteers, it might be providers. You might say, okay, every time a provider logs in, I want a message to appear across the top of the page that says, please remember to log your hours. When's it broadcast? I want it broadcast from today, and I want it to go on until, I don't know, 1st of the 1st, 2050. Okay, and click on create. That means that every time a provider logs in, that message will appear across the top of the screen. Okay, so I hope that's useful. That's just the super admin settings. Just to reiterate, make sure before you go live that you are happy with every single one of these pages. These are the key pages that you need to get right. The admin menu, so this is the super admin menu. The admin menu, which is this blue button up here, this is all to do with the day-to-day processes, the day-to-day tasks that you do in order just to run and manage the program. So I hope that's useful. If you do have any questions, then feel free to obviously raise them. You probably should have an Asana project open, so you can raise them via your Asana project. Always free if you want to give us a ring, always at the end of the phone.